Back at the turn of the millennium, people were tuning into Monday Night Raw in droves to find out what was going to happen next with their favorite angles and characters. But what were the best of these? Well, that's exactly what we're going to be looking at today. And where better to start than with the biggest story of them all, Austin versus McMahon. Talking man of the people and his continued battles with his evil billionaire boss, Vince McMahon. Hell, so popular was this one, it's pretty much responsible for the Attitude Era happening at all. But then, how could it not get people invested when it gave us such scenes as the Rattlesnake driving a chorus truck down to the ring to give Vince's corporation a beer bath, or him holding a mock gun to the boss's head and causing him to urinate on himself on a live episode of Raw. And that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the iconic moments Austin vs. McMahon gave us. Seriously, if you were watching back then, you'll no doubt remember the whole show often revolved around this angle. Sure, its importance in the pecking order was helped by the fact it usually involved the WWF title, but you could have taken the title away, and it still would have been the thing people wanted to see the most, as at this point in WWE's history, there was simply no babyface more over than Steve Austin, and there was no heel more despised than Vince McMahon. And how about the fact that this story bookmarked the entire Attitude Era? Yes, while Austin did deliver his first stunner to the boss in the autumn of 1997, it's generally accepted that the story really got going the night after WrestleMania 14, a common start point for the era. And with it technically ending with Stone Cold turning heel by siding with McMahon at WrestleMania 17, the almost universally accepted endpoint for the Attitude Era, you can see how this ended up serving as the through line for the entire time period. That said, for as important as Austin vs. McMahon was to the success of WWF at the turn of the millennium, it wasn't the only great angle going on back then. No, there were plenty of others too, one of which also involved the boss, and that's the whole Minister McMahon specifically, with him going as far as to kidnap the boss's own daughter Stephanie at one point and attempt to sacrifice her at the altar of a black wedding. How would the McMahons respond to this? Well, while Vince would remain furious, and while Stephanie would find a new lover in the form of Test, Shane would do the unthinkable because it was around here that he took the corporation stable he was by then in charge of and had them join forces with The Undertaker in the unholy corporate merger that was the corporate ministry. So you'd think at this point it was just a matter of time before the Phenom completely took over the WWF. But before that happened, we'd have to get the reveal of the mysterious higher power who had been instructing Taker from the shadows all this time, Emperor Palpatine style. And it was on the June 7th, 1999 episode of Raw that this reveal finally happened, as that was when fans found out the higher power had been Vince McMahon all along. Yes, this one notoriously made little sense, and has since been mocked for that very reason by many fans, with the moment Vince McMahon uncovers himself being particularly noteworthy because of Jim Ross's excellent "Aw, son of a bitch" proclamation. That said, it still remains an iconic storyline nonetheless. Hell, the sheer strangeness of the reveal might even have made it more iconic than it would have been had the ending been different. And it's not like this was the only iconic storyline The Undertaker was involved in during the Attitude Era either, because both before and after the Ministry of Darkness, we had the ongoing tale of the Brothers of Destruction. Who were the Brothers of Destruction? Well, they were The Undertaker and his brother Cade, the latter of whom was someone who up until 1997 had been considered lost forever after dying in a fire as a child. But in true telenovela style, towards the end of that year he reappeared to cost the Phenom his first ever Hell in a Cell match. And at this point, with him blaming his older sibling for starting that fire, a feud for the ages broke out between the two. So personal would this one get, in fact, it carried on for years after, all throughout the Attitude Era in fact, with their first series of bouts ending with the Big Red Machine quite literally being set on fire again. And this then led to the second phase of the angle where the brothers finally put their differences aside and started teaming up. Of course, such a partnership was never destined to last forever though, and so it was that before 1998 was over, the dead man would have turned heel on Kane after revealing that he indeed was the person who started that fire all those years ago. How would Kane respond to this? Well, by going off on a side quest for a while, which involved him partnering up with and eventually being betrayed by X-Pac. But once that was over, it was right back to his older brother, as before the Attitude Era was done, the two would mend fences again and reunite once more as a tag team, this time on the babyface side of the alignment chart. That's right, back at the turn of the millennium, you'd be hard-pressed to find a saga with so many twists and turns in it than you'd have found in the story of The Undertaker and Kane. And that's why it still stands tall today as one of the great angles of the Attitude Era. But what of another great tale of betrayal that was running concurrently to this? Well, that one is our next subject as it happens, the story of The Rock and Farouk. Yes, while it may not outright top many people's lists when it comes to great Attitude Era angles, this one is easily one of the best if you go back and look at it today. And part of the reason it was so great was because it gave us The Rock as we know him today, an uber-cocky heel who knew he was better than everyone else and wasn't afraid to show it. So how did this one get started then? Well, back in 1997, after an initial run with WWF, which was mired by fans rejecting him for being too cookie-cutter of babyface, Rocky Maivia decided to shake things up by turning heel and joining Farouk's Nation of Domination. Of course, over that time though, the man, now going by the name of The Rock, proved to be such a charismatic force of nature, it was impossible for fans not to enjoy seeing him more than they enjoyed seeing the leader of that stable. And Farouk recognized this too, which was exactly why, over time, you could see him growing more and more frustrated at his underling. And as that was going on, we could also see The Rock's influence continuing to swell, to the point it became clear he was going to attempt to usurp the throne before long. How would that happen in the end? Well, on the March 30th, 1998 episode of Raw, the night after WrestleMania 14, Rocky, who was by this point the Intercontinental Champion, finally struck when he kicked Farouk out of his own group and proclaimed himself to be the new leader of the Nation of Domination. And with the other members appearing to be okay with this move, it meant there was no one to challenge his leadership going forward. Sure, Farouk would try to fight back, but now that he was on his own, these attempts proved futile, as he simply wasn't able to overcome the power of the Nation on his own. No, this was The Rock's world now, and with his crew behind him fully, there was no one that was going to stop him as he continued on with this rise. And where would that rise lead him? Well, to our next great angle of the Attitude Era as it happened, because it was later on in 1998 that the Great One shocked the world by joining the Corpus tournament that was being held here to crown a new WWF champion after that belt had been vacated 2 months prior. Both The Rock and Austin started the night off strong, only for this to change when the Rattlesnake was screwed in the semifinals, leaving fans with only one hope left to walk out the night as babyface champion. What no one saw coming, however, was that, in what probably still stands today as Vince Russo's finest hour, by the time the main event pitting the People's Champion and Mankind was over, it would indeed be the former who was the winner, though in order to win, he'd have turned heel and joined the very corporation he claimed to hate so much. Yes, it was the swerve to end all swerves, and it immediately set up Rocky as the corporate champion going forward. Was this an incredibly risky move? Sure, but it worked out gangbusters in the end, because for the next few months, the Great One absolutely killed it as the final boss villain of the show, with him repeatedly destroying Mick Foley during rematches between the pair, all in the lead up to that inevitable showdown with Steve Austin at WrestleMania 15. Of course, once that latter feud was over though, The Rock would have to be returned to the side of the babyfaces, because for as much as fans love his corporate heel character, there was just no way they were going to continue booing him for much longer. And so like that then, the time of The Rock's run with the corporation came to an end, as he instead returned to being the People's Champion. But it wasn't as if the McMahons would be without a main event level performer within the ranks for long, because by the time 1999 was over, there would be a whole new powerhouse duo in charge of the show, with this giving us the age of our next subject, the McMahon-Helmsley era. Now, most of you no doubt remember this one, but for those who don't, the McMahon-Helmsley era angle began in late 1999, when heel world champion Triple H began making it his mission to torment Vince McMahon at all costs. Hell, at one point, he took things so far that he even kidnapped Stephanie McMahon, then married her in a shotgun wedding in Vegas. Was this ridiculous even by Attitude Era standards? Sure, but it was entertaining nonetheless. And it was about to get even more entertaining because at Armageddon on December 12th of that year, after going to war with the boss himself in a brutal street fight, Triple H would reveal that Stephanie had been on his side all along. So began a whole new period for WWF then, one which would see Vince McMahon leave in shame as the Game and Stephanie took over the show. And given they were both heels, this spelled bad news for all the babyfaces around them, most specifically The Rock and Mick Foley. It didn't matter how much they fought back, the fact was all the power lay in the hands of the McMahon-Helmsley regime, and so that meant the world title was almost always around the Cerebral Assassin's waist here. And even when it wasn't, he and his wife were still the focus of the show, as they threw their weight around and continued to dominate the proceedings, all the way up until Vince McMahon returned in the spring that was. Or at least it looked like things were going to change here. But once Vince revealed he was joining the McMahon-Helmsley regime at WrestleMania 16, it only strengthened their power that much more, with it taking a new on-screen commissioner in the form of Mick Foley to ultimately provide any sense of checks and balances for the heel stable and their decision-making. But by this point, it made all the sense in the world that Foley would be the man in that position, as earlier on in 2000, he and the Game had gone through a feud for the ages with one another, one which actually serves as our next subject, believe it or not. Yes, it's from a world title shot at that January's Royal Rumble as a result of shenanigans, but the Cerebral Assassin wasn't worried about this too much, as by that point, Mankind was so beaten up, so battered, it felt like it was obvious the heel champ would retain during their upcoming street fight at Madison Square Garden. One thing the Game hadn't counted on, however, was that Foley still had an ace up his sleeve in the form of the most hardcore of hardcore legends. That's right, after memorably transforming into Cactus Jack on the January 13th, 2000 episode of SmackDown, Foley forced Triple H to confront the mistake he made, as now he was no longer fighting a happy-go-lucky guy. No, he was fighting a psychotic madman. The same psychotic madman who had completely destroyed him in a match on Raw a few years prior. What followed on from there then would be arguably the greatest match of the entire Attitude Era, Triple H versus Cactus Jack at the 2000 Royal Rumble. But while the King of Kings would win this one, it wasn't the end of the feud, because just 1 month later at No Way Out, there would be a rematch, this time inside Hell in a Cell, with the added stipulation being that if Foley failed to win here, he'd be forced to retire. Would he win? No. Sadly, this would mark the end of his full-time in-ring career, because after a wild cell bout, it was the incoming champ who was still standing tall. Sure, Foley would return for one night at WrestleMania 16 in order to get the Mania main event he'd never gotten the chance to have before, but while this did briefly see the two rivals lock horns once more, by then, the real heights of the story between them were already in the past. One story which was only just getting started that night, however, was our next one, as it was at WrestleMania 16 that we got the first in a series of era-defining tag team bouts pitting the Hardy Boys against not only the Dudley Boys, but also Edge and Christian. Yes, even the most casual of fans from back at the turn of the millennium will remember this one all too well, as it gave us 3 of the most spectacular wrestling matches ever seen at that point in time, the first of which came during the Triangle Ladder match at the aforementioned Mania 16. Why was this so spectacular? Well, because it involved all 6 men doing things no one had done before, at least not on such a big stage, as using ladders in every different way imaginable, they were able to put on a stunt show no one could take their eyes off of. Needless to say then, given the fan response to this one, it wasn't long before WWF began making plans to run it back.
It's over! You gotta be kidding me! Oh my God! He's sitting on the steel WrestleMania! You gotta be kidding me! First for the table! Yeah! We may be about to see! I'm going to be in a week from Sunday! Cut on the line and unforgiven! The big show's going to throw Raven right up! Oh! Raven! No, come on! I was betting the man's hand! Oh, no, Brock, put him down! Brock, put him down! And a second twist of fate! Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, my God! And Caroline, sit aside! James! Oh, my God! Deep, not over it! Oh, my God! It's crazy! No! Get out! Oh, for God's sake! Jeff Hardy trying to do it! Oh, my God! Top of the cage! Submission, that's it. That's his job. What a suplex. That lower back of Van Dam. What an evil egotist. Oh, no. No. That's got that. My God. Tater here. Oh, no. Oh, good grief. For a table in. It is. Jeff Hardy through a table. No way. Oh, my God. No. Let's have some mercy. What's he going to do? He's looking for the end. A corkscrew move. Not this. That's a too much. The end. My God. 317. No. Oh, my God. Ladies and gentlemen. Oh, God. Oh, the steel steps. Michaels. That's my power. Reception. Happy birthday, Vince. No plumbing. You're gonna have no teeth. Don't do this. Enough is enough. Watch what he does to Taz. A DDT through a steel chair. This Raven is... He's gonna do it. Randy Orton. You better take a look at the people you made mad. Choke slam on those unforgivable. Is in another time zone. Crossbody from the top of the... You break his back! Wait a minute there. Trying to get out. Suplex! Oh my God, a suplex! Shane McMahon on the top rope. And man going coast to coast. No, don't do this. Don't do this. God, the pedigree on is even tougher. Oh no! I've been there.
Chaz has been DK'd.
Look out! Well, this has got to be deadly blasphemy. Watch out! You can't go. You can't go. Coast to coast. And he does it. He does. Lita back in. And Lita is splat dead ahead of Kane. Goodness, look at this. X Factor face first. He will counter. Look at it. 3D. It's over. There's Albert. It'll take more than that to stop him. Oh my God! For God's sake! Oh no! Hey, Bradshaw, no! Bradshaw! No!
streak showing. This is just pure rage. That's all it is. Another round. Tree of wool action for the champ.
Setting an example. Setting a distance. The head goes through the table.
Up to me. But anyway.
Oh, and now great. Is irate. Now what? Steel chair. Holly. What the hell is this?
It's a choke slam.
Choke slam for those thick wood pallets. Oh, he didn't miss it. Rhino driving Raven. Saturday night. Undertaker chair in hand. And Ted, he's not gonna do this. Look at him. He just telephoned one into a piece. Something right there. Into the wind, as they say. Oh, my God, beautiful! In this matchup, unlike the steel chair, you know, we're looking at two of the. Oh my gosh! Still moving around. It's not done. Steel chair. What's he gonna do now? He's gonna launch himself. And crush it. Shadow of face. I can't even stand up. Picked up. Get in the championship match. Oh, reversal here. Oh, man. The biscuits. I don't know if good or oh, my God. It's good. The stop shot. He's touching his thumb. Vintage Extreme Championship. Oh, my. Here, I'll promise you! Distract Mark Henry! Look out! There's something looking very well! With a dance here, even! Jericho coming in! There's a... He's looking. Oh, look out, look out, look out! Look in the eyes! Real trouble! No way! Don't do this yet! No! Oh my God! I swapped on! You're counting! Shawn Michaels! I'm having a flashback! He is here with this! Is it a bit? Oh my God! Oh my... The 3D to the wood! Whiskey! He's aiming for... Whiskey aiming for... Chris move! I'm retaining his tag titles! A touch slam! Celebrated, and then out of nowhere... Oh my... Look at that! Oh my green! Like this up! Really big time... He's gonna do it!
Oh, come on. No. Ooh, God, the second God.
Yes. Maybe a gorilla press. Slingshot City coming up. Connected with a steel cage.
There, Hardy gets up. Hey, wait a minute. There's no...
Road dog. The chair. Steve Jeff Hardy.
Wait a minute. Jeff Hardy. Jeff Hardy's...
He can't take it. No, but all right. His head. Belted it. It goes stereo. And Rocky pushed the down away. Abel's gonna take the next shot. And torn apart. Look at this.
Here comes another Hurricane Rana. Oh! It's blocked. And what a...
Grabbing the chair. And
Quick to the corner. He looked pretty good in a DDT to the chair.
Watch this move. A corkscrew.
Oh, you have the other one sitting right beside you.
The distraction. Oh, into the top.
Mercy, it's Sunday, live on pay-per-view. Now, DDT, and certainly now.
Dominator.
WWE's darkest hour would ultimately become the catalyst for its biggest transformation. The year started with Shawn Michaels as WWF champion, but everything changed when an injury forced him to vacate the title. Behind the scenes, many believed this was HBK's way of avoiding a scheduled title loss to his rival Bret Hart at WrestleMania. And this rivalry set the tone for a year filled with real-life drama that'd lead to the most controversial finish in wrestling history later in the year. Meanwhile, a certain redneck named Steve Austin was supposed to be a villain, but fans were connecting with his anti-authority persona in ways WWE hadn't anticipated. At the Royal Rumble, Austin won the match by sneaking back in after Bret Hart eliminated him. Commissioner Gorilla Monsoon refused to give Austin his WrestleMania title shot, instead booking him in a fatal four-way for the vacated title. Bret Hart won the title, but Austin would cost him just days later. Then came WrestleMania 13, and the match that changed everything. Austin and Bret Hart delivered one of the greatest Mania matches of all time. But more importantly, it featured the legendary double turn. The image of a bloodied Austin refusing to give up turned him into a hero. Meanwhile, Bret attacked Austin after the bell, completing his transformation into a villain. Austin would continue raising hell and feuding against the Hart Foundation until a botched piledriver at SummerSlam almost ended his career. But 1997 had more shocks in store. Paul Bearer revealed that The Undertaker's brother Kane was still alive. Kane debuted at the first ever Hell in a Cell match at Bad Blood, ripping the cage door off to lay out his brother. This kick-started the most iconic supernatural feud in WWE history that had become a part of mainstream culture. But while Kane and Taker engaged in their personal war, a bigger controversy was about to shake the WWF. WWF champion Bret Hart was leaving for WCW and refused to lose the championship to a recently returned Shawn Michaels in Canada, given their history of real-life hatred. Not wanting to risk his company's champion appearing on WCW with the top prize, Vince McMahon and a select few orchestrated the Montreal Screwjob, which would go down as the most controversial finish in pro wrestling history. Vince had the referee call for the bell while Bret was in the sharpshooter, making it appear that Bret had submitted. Michaels and DX quickly rushed backstage, while fans threw garbage in the ring and Bret spat at Vince. The night after, Vince did a sit-down interview sporting a black eye from Bret, telling the world Bret screwed Bret. The Mr. McMahon character, wrestling's greatest villain, was born, and the pieces were in place for the biggest rivalry in WWE history. If 1997 laid the foundation, 1998 was the year WWE's revolution went mainstream. The Austin vs. McMahon rivalry became the hottest storyline in professional wrestling, finally giving fans a reason to switch from WCW Nitro to Monday Night Raw. The year started explosively at the Royal Rumble when Stone Cold won the match, earning a WrestleMania title shot. But the moment everyone remembers came the next night on Raw. Mike Tyson, the baddest man on the planet, appeared to announce his involvement as special enforcer for the WrestleMania main event. Austin marched down, got in Tyson's face, flipped him off, and sparked a brawl that had to be broken up by dozens of security guards. The segment brought massive mainstream attention to WWE, and suddenly everyone was talking about wrestling again. At WrestleMania 14, in a shocking twist, Tyson revealed he was aligned with Austin rather than DX, raising Stone Cold's hand as the new champion. The Austin era had officially begun, and the boss wasn't happy. Throughout the spring and summer, McMahon tried everything to take the title from Austin. But the more McMahon tried to destroy him, the more popular Austin became.
Meanwhile, The Undertaker and Kane's supernatural saga dominated the other half of the main event scene. Kane had cost Undertaker the championship at the Royal Rumble by setting his casket on fire, but the dead man returned just in time for WrestleMania and got his revenge. McMahon eventually weaponized their hatred, pointing both brothers at Austin. At King of the Ring in June, Kane actually won the WWF Championship, though Austin recaptured it the very next night on Raw. The night also saw Undertaker throw Mankind off the top of the Hell in a Cell in one of the most replayed moments in pro wrestling history. However, the biggest story of 1998 came at Survivor Series. The Austin-Kane-Taker saga had eventually led to the WWF title being vacated, and the Deadly Game tournament was held to crown a new champion, with the finals pitting The Rock against Mankind. Earlier in the night, Shane McMahon revealed he'd been aligned with his father all along, screwing Austin out of the tournament. But then came the massive swerve. The Rock turned on Mankind and aligned with Vince McMahon, becoming the corporate champion. The People's Champion had become the most hated man in WWE, declaring he didn't sell out, he bought in. By year's end, WWE had finally turned the tide in the Monday Night Wars. The Rock had transformed from hated babyface to electrifying heel. Kane, Mankind, and Taker had cemented themselves as major players in the main event scene. Vince and Shane became the most hated father-son duo in wrestling, and Austin was poised for revenge against The Rock and the McMahons. The momentum from 1998 carried into 1999, but this would become known as the Attitude Era's messiest and most controversial year. It started strong when Mankind defeated The Rock for the WWF Championship on the January 4th episode of Raw. WCW spoiled the result on Nitro, hoping fans would stay with their show. But the tactic backfired and a huge portion of Nitro's audience switched channels to watch Mick Foley's crowning moment. At the Royal Rumble, The Rock defeated Mankind in a brutally controversial I Quit match that featured an obscene number of chair shots. Then came the Rumble match with Austin and Vince entering as the first two competitors. Austin got beat up by the corporation and taken to a hospital during the match, only to return in an ambulance and unleash chaos. However, a distraction from The Rock allowed Vince to eliminate Austin and win the Rumble to earn a title shot against The Rock at WrestleMania. Vince forfeited his WrestleMania opportunity the next night, and WWF Commissioner Shawn Michaels immediately awarded it to the runner-up Steve Austin instead. The build-up to this match also saw the WWF debut of The Big Show, who would become one of the most recognized wrestlers of all time. Austin defeated The Rock for the title at WrestleMania 15, and the power struggle between Austin and McMahon escalated when Linda and Stephanie gave their WWF stock to Stone Cold, making him company CEO. April brought another shocking development when Shane McMahon merged his father's corporation with The Undertaker's Ministry of Darkness, creating the Corporate Ministry. The ministry kidnapped Stephanie McMahon, and for months, WWE teased that a mysterious higher power was pulling the strings. The reveal finally came in June that it was Vince McMahon all along, and Vince and Shane eventually won back control over WWF from Austin in a ladder match at King of the Ring. But then came May 23rd, a date that would haunt WWE forever. At the Over the Edge pay-per-view, Owen Hart fell from the rafters during his entrance and died in the ring. This would go down as one of the darkest days in pro wrestling history, and WWE's decision to continue the show after the accident drew massive criticism. Despite the darkness, 1999 did introduce two future legends. Chris Jericho debuted from WCW in August with massive fanfare. Then in November, Kurt Angle made his WWE debut at Survivor Series, beginning what would become one of the greatest rookie years in wrestling history. At SummerSlam, Mankind shockingly defeated Austin for the WWF Championship, only to drop it to Triple H the next night on Raw. The year ended with the McMahon-Helmsley era beginning when Triple H defeated Vince McMahon at Armageddon. It was revealed that Stephanie had been working with Triple H all along, willingly marrying him as revenge for her father's actions earlier in the year. The real-life couple would become a power force both on and off-screen for years to come. But as 1999 came to a close, all the pieces were in place for what many consider the greatest year in WWE history. With Stone Cold sidelined for neck surgery, many wondered if WWE could maintain its momentum without their biggest star. The answer came in the form of The Rock, who finally stepped out of Austin's shadow to prove he could carry the company as its top babyface. The Great One won the Royal Rumble in January, setting up his WrestleMania main event and beginning a year where he would headline an astounding 10 out of 12 pay-per-views. But 2000 wasn't just about The Rock's ascension, it was the year WWE's roster depth reached unprecedented levels. In January, Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, and Perry Saturn jumped ship from WCW as The Radicals, immediately elevating the in-ring quality across the board. However, no talent proved himself faster than Kurt Angle. The Olympic gold medalist's rookie year was nothing short of extraordinary. His arrogant, all-American hero character was perfect heel work, and his amateur wrestling background gave him a unique style that meshed perfectly with sports entertainment. By October, Angle had captured the WWE Championship, completing a journey from Olympic rookie to world champion in less than a year. The tag team division reached heights that have arguably never been matched. Edge and Christian, the Hardy Boys, and the Dudley Boys completely redefined what tag team wrestling could be. Their triangle ladder match at WrestleMania 2000 was just the beginning. At SummerSlam, they delivered the first ever tables, ladders, and chairs match, a chaotic masterpiece that transformed tag wrestling from bathroom breaks to must-see TV. The main event of WrestleMania 2000 saw Triple H retain the WWE Championship in a fatal four-way against The Rock, Big Show, and Mick Foley. a McMahon in every corner creating maximum drama. Stone Cold returned at Backlash to a thunderous reaction, immediately inserting himself back into the main event scene. But the year wouldn't be complete without some absurd storylines. The Austin mystery attacker angle culminated with Rikishi taking credit before it was revealed Triple H had orchestrated everything. Meanwhile, the love triangle between Triple H, Stephanie McMahon, and Kurt Angle added soap opera drama that somehow worked perfectly. The year closed with Armageddon's first ever six-man Hell in a Cell, a match that brought together every major storyline of the year. Austin seeking revenge, The Rock chasing gold, Triple H proving his dominance, Undertaker claiming this is his yard, Kurt Angle defending his title, and Rikishi paying for his betrayal all collided in one historic encounter. From a business and creative standpoint, 2000 was WWE's absolute peak, the gold standard against which all other years are measured. But if 2000 was epic, 2001 would change the WWE forever. The year 2001 started strong with Stone Cold winning his record third Royal Rumble, but the biggest shock came just weeks later. WrestleMania 17 in Houston is considered by many to be the greatest wrestling pay-per-view of all time. The show delivered on every level. Edge and Christian, the Hardy Boys, and the Dudley Boys outdid themselves with TLC 2, an even more spectacular sequel to their SummerSlam classic. The Undertaker defeated Triple H in an intense fight. Shane McMahon beat his father Vince with help from his mother Linda and Trish Stratus, but the main event would steal the whole show. Steve Austin challenged The Rock for the WWF Championship in what should have been a standard battle of alphas. Instead, Austin turned heel and aligned with Vince McMahon in one of the most shocking moments in wrestling history. When The Rock left for Hollywood the very next night to film The Scorpion King, WWE was suddenly without both of its top babyfaces. The situation worsened when Triple H aligned with Austin to form the two-man power trip rather than turning face to oppose him. The duo held the WWF Championship and Tag Team titles simultaneously, dominating Raw until Triple H tore his quad in May and would be out of action for the rest of the year. But the biggest story of 2001 came with WWE's purchase of WCW. The Monday Night Wars was officially over, and WWE had won. WCW's invasion began in May with Lance Storm interfering in a match, followed by Diamond Dallas Page and Booker T. But there was a massive problem. WWE refused to buy out the guaranteed contracts of WCW's biggest stars like Goldberg, Sting, and the NWO, meaning the invasion was led by mid-carders. To boost the angle, ECW was revived and merged with WCW to form the Alliance, with Stephanie McMahon becoming ECW's owner. At the Invasion pay-per-view in July, Steve Austin shockingly turned heel again, joining the Alliance despite it making no storyline sense. The angle that should have been a home run was failing because fans couldn't buy the Alliance as a legitimate threat without the big-name WCW stars. The Invasion mercifully ended at Survivor Series in November with Team WWE defeating Team Alliance in a winner-takes-all match. Kurt Angle revealed himself as a double agent, screwing Austin and giving The Rock the victory. But 2001 had one last major moment. At Vengeance in December, Chris Jericho defeated both The Rock and Steve Austin on the same night to become the first ever undisputed champion. 2001 was a year of missed opportunities, shocking turns, and new arrivals. The year marked the end of the Attitude Era, and a more ruthless and aggressive chapter was about to begin. After losing a legal battle with the World Wildlife Fund, the World Wrestling Federation officially became World Wrestling Entertainment. The company literally had to get the F out, and WWF became WWE. But the name change was just one of many massive shifts in 2002. After the arrival of WCW and ECW stars, the roster had become so bloated that WWE implemented a brand split, dividing talent between Raw and SmackDown as separate shows with their own champions and storylines. By September, there were two world titles: the WWE Championship on SmackDown and the newly created World Heavyweight Championship on Raw, which Eric Bischoff simply handed to Triple H without a tournament. The year saw the WWE debut of the NWO, who initially debuted as heels, but fans simply refused to boo Hogan, who returned to the company after almost a decade. Hogan turned babyface within 30 days, and at WrestleMania 18, his match with The Rock had the crowd going crazy. The Rock left for Hollywood shortly after WrestleMania to pursue his acting career full-time. Then in June, Stone Cold Steve Austin walked out of the company due to creative differences. WWE's two biggest stars, the men who had carried them through the Attitude Era, were suddenly gone, and WWE was left with a massive void. But WWE had been preparing for this moment. A new class of talent debuted in 2002 that would define the next generation. Brock Lesnar, a freakish athlete and amateur wrestling champion, debuted on Raw and immediately received a rocket push. Lesnar defeated The Rock at SummerSlam to become the youngest world champion in history. John Cena arrived by answering Kurt Angle's open challenge. Randy Orton came in as a cocky third-generation star. Batista joined as an intimidating powerhouse. And Rey Mysterio brought his revolutionary masked high-flying style to SmackDown. The year brought emotional returns as well. In January, Triple H came back from his torn quad to a deafening ovation at Madison Square Garden. The game would go on to dominate the main event scene and defeat Jericho for the undisputed championship at WrestleMania 18. Then at SummerSlam, Shawn Michaels returned to in-ring action after 4 years away, facing Triple H in an emotional, unsanctioned match where HBK got the win. The year also gave us the first ever Elimination Chamber match, where Michaels dethroned Triple H as the World Heavyweight Champion, only to lose it back a month later. The year closed with Brock Lesnar as WWE Champion, while Triple H's reign of terror was beginning on Raw. The Ruthless Aggression era was officially underway, and a new generation was ready to take over. Triple H's reign of terror reached its peak in 2003, and there seemed to be no escape from the game's iron grip on Raw along with his faction, Evolution. At the Royal Rumble in January, fans suffered through a disastrous 17-minute match between Triple H and Scott Steiner. Meanwhile, on SmackDown, Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit stole the show with an excellent WWE Championship match, and Brock Lesnar won the Rumble itself. WrestleMania 19 in Seattle delivered one of the most underrated manias of all time, despite nearly ending in tragedy. Brock Lesnar won the WWE Championship, but nearly offed himself attempting a shooting star press, landing directly on his head in one of the most terrifying botches in WrestleMania history. The show also featured the final installment of The Rock and Austin saga, with The Rock winning to send the Texas Rattlesnake into an unannounced retirement. Shawn Michaels and Chris Jericho delivered a 5-star classic, proving HBK could still hang with the best. Former WCW powerhouse Goldberg debuted after WrestleMania, immediately confronting The Rock and bringing fresh energy to Raw. At Backlash, he demolished The Rock in dominant fashion. WWE finally seemed to have a new top star capable of dethroning Triple H. But at SummerSlam, in the Elimination Chamber, Triple H eliminated Goldberg last to retain the World Heavyweight Championship. It should have been Goldberg's coronation moment, but the game's reign of terror wouldn't allow it. When Goldberg finally won the title at Unforgiven in September, it was too late, and his momentum had already been killed. The reign lasted only until December's Armageddon, where Triple H defeated Goldberg to recapture the title. All 4 Evolution members won championships that night, achieving a clean sweep. Kane transformed from a beloved mid-carder to a menace to society when he unmasked and turned Monday Night Raw into a horror show. Meanwhile, on SmackDown, the SmackDown 6 raised the bar for in-ring action, while John Cena transformed from a generic rookie into a freestyling rapper. By year's end, it was clear 2003 had been a difficult transitional period. Triple H's stranglehold had exhausted fans, though the continued excellence of wrestlers like Kurt Angle, Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, and the rising John Cena offered hope for the future. With the pieces in place, the year 2004 would bring 2 of the most emotional and inspiring stories in WWE history, and one of its most disappointing matches. At the Royal Rumble, Chris Benoit entered at number 1 and lasted over an hour to win the match, defying all odds. But the bigger story came at No Way Out on the SmackDown side, where Eddie Guerrero challenged Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship. Eddie had overcome drug addiction, rebuilt his life, and worked his way back to the main event. Few expected him to actually win. WrestleMania was just a month away, and Lesnar was rumored to be facing Goldberg. But after battling the Beast for nearly 30 minutes, Eddie hit the frog splash, got the pin, and became WWE Champion in one of the most emotional moments WWE has ever produced. Then came WrestleMania 20 at Madison Square Garden. Brock Lesnar versus Goldberg should have been a dream match, but word had leaked that both men were leaving WWE. Lesnar was tired of the brutal travel schedule, and Goldberg's contract was expiring. The Madison Square Garden crowd booed both men mercilessly throughout the entire match. Both looked miserable and put in minimal effort, creating one of the most awkward WrestleMania matches ever. However, that didn't stop the show from being iconic. The Undertaker returned as the Dead Man after years as the biker character, defeating Kane to extend his streak. John Cena defeated the Big Show in the opening match of the night to become the US champion. And in the main event, Chris Benoit defeated Triple H and Shawn Michaels in a triple threat match to win the World Heavyweight Championship. The show closed with Benoit and Eddie Guerrero, best friends in real life, celebrating together in the ring, both holding world titles. It was a magical moment that has since largely been erased from history by the tragedy that would come years later. Meanwhile, on the bright side, Randy Orton continued his rise as the Legend Killer, feuding with Mick Foley in a legendary hardcore match at Backlash. At SummerSlam, the 24-year-old Orton defeated Benoit to become the youngest world heavyweight champion in WWE history. But the very next night, Triple H kicked him out of Evolution, furious that his protege had surpassed him. At Unforgiven, the game defeated Orton to reclaim the title after just 28 days, and the reign of terror continued. On the SmackDown side, John Cena continued his rise with the US title, while JBL transformed from a mid-carder into a cowboy champion and feuded with Eddie Guerrero and The Undertaker. In other notable moments, Undertaker buried Paul Bearer in cement. Heidenreich did some questionable things to Michael Cole. Kurt Angle got chokeslammed off a balcony, and Kane and Lita had one of the most violent weddings in history. But as 2004 came to an end, WWE was ready for its hottest year since 2000. The year 2005 marked a generational shift in WWE. After years of dominance, Triple H's reign of terror was finally about to end, but not before one of the greatest botches in Royal Rumble history. Batista and John Cena were the final 2 competitors in the Rumble. In the planned finish, Batista was supposed to get the win. Instead, they accidentally eliminated each other for real, and both hit the floor at the exact same time. In one of the funniest moments in wrestling history, Vince McMahon stormed down to the ring to fix the situation, and legitimately blew out both of his quads climbing through the ropes. The match was restarted and Batista won as planned, but the image of an injured Vince seething in the ring became an instant meme. The WrestleMania 21 build was equally electric. Batista teased which champion he would face, with many wondering if he'd go to SmackDown and allow Evolution to control both brands. But on the February 21st Raw, Batista gave Triple H the thumbs down, the same gesture the game had used on Randy Orton the year before, and powerbombed him through a table. At WrestleMania 21, history was made twice. John Cena defeated JBL to win the WWE Championship, beginning his journey to becoming the face of WWE for the next 15 years. And after over 2 years of Triple H's reign of terror holding Raw hostage, Batista defeated the Game to win the World Heavyweight Championship and become the new face of Raw. A new era had officially begun, with 2 young stars leading their respective brands into the future. But then, the 2005 draft shocked everyone when John Cena was moved to Raw, leaving SmackDown without their top champion. Days later, Batista was drafted to SmackDown, taking his title with him. June also brought the legendary ECW One Night Stand pay-per-view, a nostalgia-filled event that's considered one of the greatest shows of all time. But the year wouldn't be complete without some career-defining controversies. Matt Hardy had been fired for going public about his girlfriend Lita's affair with Edge, but fans saw Hardy as the victim, and the massive heat on Edge and Lita actually elevated their careers. The feud culminated in a series of matches at SummerSlam, Unforgiven, and Raw, with Edge winning the majority of them. In the end, Hardy lost a loser leaves Raw ladder match and was sent to SmackDown. Edge and Lita remained together on Raw, and their real-life relationship gave rise to one of the most hated couples in WWE history. Meanwhile, on SmackDown, Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero fought over the custody of Dominic, with Eddie claiming that he was Dominic's real father. The year also saw the epic rivalry between Randy Orton and The Undertaker, with Orton doing everything in his power to slay the dead man, but Taker proving time and time again that you can't kill what's already dead. In the main event of SummerSlam, Shawn Michaels made a mockery of Hulk Hogan, overselling every single move in comically exaggerated fashion to protest Hogan's backstage politicking. Though Hogan got the win, HBK was the real winner in fans' eyes. But then, the year took a tragic turn on November 13th when Eddie Guerrero died from a heart attack. WWE dedicated special tribute episodes of Raw and SmackDown to Latino heat, allowing everyone to grieve the loss of one of wrestling's most beloved figures. The year ended with Batista solidified as SmackDown's top star and John Cena continuing to divide audiences. Triple H had finally been dethroned, Randy Orton was establishing himself as a main event player, and Edge was lurking with his Money in the Bank briefcase, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The greatest era of WWE was coming to a close, but it had accomplished its mission of creating the next generation of superstars who would carry the company for years to come. From 1997 to 2005, WWE transformed from a struggling company on the verge of bankruptcy into a mainstream entertainment juggernaut. Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Triple H, Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, Mick Foley, Chris Jericho, Kurt Angle, Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, John Cena, Batista, and Randy Orton all left their marks on this incredible period. Some moments were magical, others tragic, but together, they created the greatest era professional wrestling has ever seen. A time that will never be forgotten and can never be replicated.
We can still today go back and watch any episode, segment, or match from the Attitude Period and be reminded of why we are wrestling fans, since it was ranked as the 4th best thing of the 1990s. With a roster packed with legendary names such as Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, The Undertaker, Mick Foley, Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Kane, Kurt Angle, Big Show, Chris Jericho, Rikishi, Booker T, Edge, Christian, The Hardy Boys, The Dudley Boys, Trish Stratus, Lita, and more, WWE's Attitude Era was the most successful period in company history.
You're fired.
Very few wrestlers sat idle during this period, and almost every wrestler in the company was entangled in a storyline. At the time, the face of the company was Steve Austin, whose rival, The Rock, was right behind him, sharing those prestigious top spots on the roster. Although we do have a special fondness for the new generation era, it was crucial for the corporation to update its family-friendly image in order to remain relevant. It was fashionable to be a fan, and you could watch terrific wrestling programs on TV just about whenever you wanted. TV ratings were at an all-time high. Sit through one 3-hour episode of Monday Night Raw, and you'll be longing for the old days. This era captures everything that I truly miss about wrestling. Proper storytelling, amazing in-ring work, varied match stipulations, and outrageous characters that definitely felt larger than life. These are not just storylines. These were epic sagas that were happening in wrestling, and never again did we feel the same with the media again.
Shane McMahon is on Nitro! What in the hell is he doing?
That's not enough. The matches in this era took risks. In the Attitude Era, WWE climbed back to the top of the wrestling world by taking chances. People got hit with chairs, set on fire, thrown off the tops of gigantic structures, and run over by cars on a weekly basis. All of these things kept my interest. And when you mix that up with a good story, you're presented with the most awesome moments in life. Sure, the Attitude Era ripped off Extreme Championship Wrestling's hardcore wrestling phenomenon, but the fact that this single era brought the highest ratings that the WWE has ever had should tell you about the success and reception it deserves. And to whom do we owe our gratitude for everything that the Attitude Period has provided for us? Nobody else but Vince McMahon. The best thing the man has ever done for the business and wrestling itself, despite the fact that he has made some of the most dubious judgments in the industry, was to initiate this trend. It's always worthwhile to revisit this era of wrestling since it was so inventive, fascinating, and enjoyable. Fans of wrestling are still hoping for this age to return, but since WWE returns to the PG era, they are no longer interested in presenting compelling storylines and are instead overly focused on worthless in-ring work. As a result of seeing wrestling getting worse and worse, it makes going back to the Attitude Era a lot better than we remembered. And these are the 10 wrestlers that are responsible for making the Attitude Era so great. If you wanted to get a whiff of the essence of wrestling at this time, to feel its electricity, there exists a match that exemplifies everything that was the Attitude Era. The names Grandmaster Sexay and Scotty 2 Hotty don't particularly scream superstar when you hear them, do they? But back during the Attitude Era, and especially in 2000, the team of Too Cool were huge superstars. Fans were fervently supporting everyone at the time. But these performers were drawing the biggest crowds outside of Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock. WWE wasn't yet utilizing the term cruiserweight. The villainous duo of Too Sexy Brian Christopher and Too Hot Scott Taylor was formed in 1998, but it wasn't until June 1999 that they started to become well known. A storyline involving nepotism between Christopher and Jerry the King Lawler had been hinted at by WWE prior to their tag team match, it should be noted. In typical outrageous form, Too Cool started dancing their way to the ring and, in the process, danced their way into the hearts of the WWE fans. What was it that actually gave their popularity a boost? Becoming friends with Rikishi Fatu, in an odd way. The Head Shrinkers and the Sultan were two gimmicks that Rikishi had used in the WWE, but Rikishi seemed to have the most appeal. Whether or not that is because he rubbed his behind in superstars' faces or not, one can only speculate. But the mean, tough Samoan who could dance was a wildly good fit for Too Cool, and they created magic together. All through 2000, the trio would dance together after their matches, and they'd convince Rikishi to do so with the yellow shades that, for some reason, transformed him. At the 2000 Royal Rumble, the three men had a moment where they were the only three in the match, and they decided to do their patented dance, much to the delight of Madison Square Garden. Of course, Rikishi then threw both Christopher and Taylor out. Too Cool defeated Edge and Christian to capture the tag team titles, and although Scotty would win belts with Rikishi in 2004, this would be Christopher and Scotty's only reign as a duo. Rikishi, father of the Usos, left the group in late 2000 after it was revealed that he had inexplicably run down Stone Cold Steve Austin a year earlier. If you've made it, Scotty was written off TV with a broken ankle from Kurt Angle, but in reality, he had serious neck issues that would plague the rest of his career, and he needed surgery. Later that same year, Sexay was released from WWE after he was arrested for attempting to cross the Canada-United States border with illegal drugs in his possession. This was the beginning of issues that would hurt Christopher. That was pretty much it for Too Cool in the Attitude Era. Scotty would return to the company following neck surgery and eventually team up with Rikishi on SmackDown following the brand split. As mentioned earlier, they'd win the tag belts once. What do they currently do? Brian Christopher sadly took his own life in July 2018. After being stopped for drunk driving and then attempting to avoid capture, he hanged himself in his cell. Despite being only 46 years old, it is long thought that he had fought alcohol and drug addictions. Taylor reflected on his passing by saying, "Brian and I were different individuals outside of the ring. We didn't go on any trips together, share a room, or actually hang out. But each time we passed that curtain, our combined power worked. Magic, which cannot be replaced. We were just too cool. BC, you will be missed."
We were just very different people, and we went our side. We didn't speak for 5 years. It was sad, and I knew towards the end it was getting worse and worse. And
Taylor is a coach for WWE at the Performance Center and is credited with helping to shape many of the stars we know and love today. He came up with her finisher, the woman's right, according to Lacey Evans, who spoke with TalkSport. Rikishi is enjoying retirement and is a WWE Hall of Famer. He occasionally makes appearances on the independent circuit